Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Program Noted podcast. I am your host, Niki Purdy, and I'm so happy to be here today. I sit on the board of directors of the Newark Symphony Orchestra. I am the chair of the Education and Outreach Committee, and frankly, my favorite, I am the principal bass player of the bass section in the orchestra. With us today, we also have Simeone Tartaglione, who is NSO's wonderful music director. He is also the head of the orchestral instruments division at Catholic University, where he is also the music director of the orchestra. And additionally, he also is the music director of the Delaware Youth Symphony Orchestra, which is very impressive. We also have Mr. Russell Murray with us, a professor of music history at University of Delaware, and also the director of the early music program there, and the music director of the Chesapeake Brass Band. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Always a pleasure.
We have such an exciting program coming up this April. Our concert is April the 25th. This program is dedicated to Louisa Marks, a longtime cello player and dear friend of everyone in the orchestra, I know myself included, who passed away over the summer. We miss her dearly. And so we are dedicating this program to her. It's a wonderful program. We've got some really awesome pieces coming up. We have on this program the Dvorak Serenade for strings and the Beethoven Sextet for winds, in addition to an archived recording of the Tchaikovsky 1812 Overture, which is what a piece. We actually, I believe, were all involved, all three of us were involved in that particular concert. Simeone was conducting. I was not yet principal bass, but was in the bass section. And Russell's brass band played with us on that concert. Right, Russell?
Yes, it was a crowded stage.
Very crowded stage. Oh my goodness. So Simeone, actually, let's start to, let's open up by talking about what goes into putting on a production with that many musicians.
I'm Italian. I love big tables where a lot of people can eat together. So with music, the more people can be together on stage, the happier I am. But there is some, philological truth to that. So this piece, the 1812, it is played often. Karajan started that tradition, but Tchaikovsky actually has an addition of a military band. It's optional, but if you have it, then let's put it in. So we added the band, of course, and also we had two choirs who joined us, because as Karajan started it, and then this tradition kind of stuck, we also have a choir singing some of the Russian anthems inside the piece. So that makes really a piece with hundreds of people, and it's really magnificent. I think we had a great time. Roman Pavlovsky, I believe, was also joining that piece. So we had two music directors at the same time on the same stage. So it was quite a memorable piece. I think Roman was playing the cannons.
Yeah, so cannons, actually, let's talk about that. 1812 is famous for having cannons in the score. And the reason it has cannons in the score is that Tchaikovsky wrote it because the Russians successfully repelled Napoleon's attempted invasion in the War of 1812. And Russell, what can you tell us about war music?
Well, the 1812 is really sort of the end of a long tradition of composers finding ways to sort of recreate the soundtrack of warfare. One of the most famous ones that really sort of set the tone was in the 16th century. Clement Jeannequin, a French composer, wrote a piece to celebrate the French victory in the Battle of Marignan. And the thing that really stood out about it, there have been other pieces that dealt with battle. We can go back to the hymn that was written in commemoration of Henry V's victory at Agincourt. But this one was different because in the second half of the chanson, the singers started making sound effects, and so you could hear the sounds of drums and the triadic fanfares of trumpets and distant cannons. So Tchaikovsky wasn't the first; it was just the singers who were the cannons. So the cannons and small arms fire and all of that noise that goes into warfare. And it was so popular, other composers either borrowed it or reworked it or wrote their own. When Milan beat the French later, then a Milanese composer wrote another battle piece. So it was borrowed, and there are even masses based on these battle songs. Very, very popular in the 16th, 17th, 18th century. Kind of died out in the 19th century. The only two that really stand out are Beethoven's Wellington's Victory and Tchaikovsky's 1812.
Interesting. I think a lot about the evolution of modern music in Europe after World War I and World War II, and sort of wonder why that tradition died out in the form that it existed in before, because music was so affected by both of the world wars. And it's just, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that the biggest thing is, especially World War I and World War II, who would want to celebrate those in any way? I mean, war was something that was at a distance. You know, in the world, in the Civil War, people would gather on a hill and watch the battle that was down in the valley. But you know, with the invention of mechanized warfare, there's really nothing to. Well, the only other piece I can think of is the Threnody for the victims of Hiroshima. I mean, so it's gone to not celebrating war, not recreating war, but composers pushing back.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it was a different use of sounds.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the old times, the military bands were really integral part of battles. It was like almost staged how they fight each other. So there
Right.
was a different probably concept of
Yeah.
war fighting.
Right.
And with World War One and World War Two was
Yeah.
it was just a
And
massive.
it seems almost civilized in the Civil War. You know, when the two sides were camped close to each other, one of the bands would start playing, and of course they'd play. You know, a Southern band would strike up Dixie, and the Northern band would hoot and yell and hiss and boo, and then they'd play Battle Hymn of the Republic, and it would go back and forth until someone played something like, you know, No Place Like Home, and they could all agree on that, and then it was over.
Yeah, yeah. The Pandoretsky is the one that came to mind for me with, you know, sort of that post World War music. The intent of it changes, the function of it changes,
Yeah.
but in some ways is still very much imitating not the sounds of war, but the emotional pain.
Right.
Yeah, very interesting. It's triumphant, unlike the Penderecki. And it's a wonderful piece. I have happy memories of that particular composition, that particular performance of it. There's one performance of it that stands out for me in my mind in music history, which is when Tchaikovsky himself conducted it at the opening of Carnegie Hall, which, you know, musical moments I wish I could go back and experience in history. That one is definitely towards the top of my list. Thank you, gentlemen. We also have two other really excellent pieces coming up on this concert. We have the Dvorak Serenade for Strings. Simeone, tell us a little bit about the history surrounding that piece.
First of all, I want to say that one of the reasons we decided to dedicate this program to Louisa is because of this serenade. This serenade has some of the beautiful cello moments you can find in music history for a string piece of that caliber. So we miss her. So hearing this melody from the cello would be really a way to thank her for all the beautiful music she shared with us in these years. So this piece is really a remembrance of her in many ways. It's a very happy piece because Dvorak was not at that point, right before this piece, Dvorak was not that recognized. He had a really serious money issue. You know, he had a wife and a kid and no money. He was so, you know, poor, he could not even afford a piano. So he got with this piece, before he got this competition win where Brahms wasn't in the jury, and Brahms really wrote nice thing about him, and actually in the motivation there was a mention to the fact that this composer needs to buy a piano, so now he can just worry about composing, not just make a living and give food to the wife and the kid. So in many ways, all of a sudden, from being on the borderline of not a successful person that could not provide for his family. He was on the main stage of Europe with the endorsement of the #1 composer alive. So this piece is the first thing he writes right after that. So the joy, the E major bright feelings are gorgeous. It's a piece in 5 movements. So one more, maybe, if you want to go back to some tradition, but at the same time it's a serenade. So serenades are supposed to be many movements. What is beautiful and somehow not necessarily, sorry, that's the beauty of doing this thing on Zoom.
Yeah.
What is nice is the way that he used the different themes from the different movements. They come back and forth. There are the beginning that comes back right in the last movement. Some of the accompaniments, even in the waltz in the second movement, comes back later on. And then there is a beautiful scherzo that is super fast with a lot of notes, and the players are having a great time in practicing it. And there is a beautiful fourth movement that is really reflective and really romantic with the even this is a young piece. It's opus 22. You can see the mature Dvorak that will be in the New World second movement and in these gorgeous pieces he wrote after. And the last movement is really a lot of notes, super energetic, and in the middle of like a paroxystic syncopation, he opened the door to the melody of the first movement again, peaceful and bright. And then all of a sudden, the super fast presto, the very last page, that brings everything to close with an incredible energy. So it's a piece that is a lot of fun to play, to conduct, and I can tell to listen, I'm super sure.
Fabulous. I think I'm excited about the Dvorak. So that is going to be performed outside, right? That is not an archived piece. Tell me about that experience preparing this piece, sort of in the constraints of COVID.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be back. Of course, we are outside, so we try to keep everybody safe. The vast majority now are vaccinated, so we feel more comfortable for that reason as well. Of course, being outside means that sometimes it's rain and we cancel the rehearsal. Sometimes it's too cold and we cancel the rehearsal. But we had some Zoom rehearsals to make up for them, so the technology came handy, and it's remarkable that it's useful. So Zoom rehearsals that are, of course, quintessential not together concept of rehearsing still made it up for some of the time we lost because of weather. We have a beautiful location at the Presbyterian Church, so we plan to have this live stream if the weather will help. So that will be the first thing we do back together since October. So it's a great moment for all of us.
Fantastic. Gotta be wonderful to be back together. I'm hoping to make that concert myself. The last piece on this program is the Beethoven Sextet for Winds, which is a chamber piece. I was hoping maybe, Russell, could you tell us just a little bit about the early history of chamber music?
Well, that's kind of hard to start.
Sorry, you on that one.
Yeah. I think the real start for chamber music for winds starts in the 18th century, and a lot of the chamber music was written as sort of occasional music, as music that would not be watched and listened to in the same way as the symphony, but would be sort of part of the environment. So it often makes use of lighter forms, but what really helps is the improvements in construction of instruments after the beginning of the 19th century.
Yeah, interesting. I like that idea of kind of the different intent behind different styles of composition, chamber music being named as such because it's not meant to be played necessarily on a stage, but in the background of a chamber filled with people.
And this particular piece is a very strange story. Beethoven dedicated to a big elector that he said that hearing music, chamber music by winds, helped him with digesting better. So the piece was meant to be, music for food for the elector. So, and Beethoven said he wrote it one night. I don't know. We'll see about that. But
We'll see
it's
how-
kind of interesting to see the kind of occasion this particular piece was supposed to.
I think that presents our audience with a rare opportunity to listen to this piece and experience it as it was meant to be, which is having a gigantic feast. So in the comfort of your own homes, you can have a giant meal and listen to this piece. Well, excellent. Is there anything either one of you would like to add?
I would like to say about this piece that some people sometimes are surprised by the opus number is so close to Beethoven 5 and other symphonies, a more mature Beethoven. And the reason is that the publisher, Brykov, took the piece on 10 years after it was written. So the opus number doesn't really match when the piece was written. There is a freshness with this piece, an inventiveness of melodies. It's a very healthy piece. So in many ways, I think probably he had a very good result with the digestion of the elector. So it's not the Beethoven fighting and conflicting that we find according to the opus number that is supposed to go. But that's because, again, it was written way before.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's interesting. Russell, do you have any closing thoughts you want to add here?
No, I'm looking forward to seeing the orchestra live. That's exciting. I'm looking forward to going back 8 years and hearing the Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, getting to relive that fabulous concert.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. We always
Thank you.
having you on the podcast. Just with that, we want to wish everyone the happiest of spring times. Hopefully your allergies are mild and your family is healthy. If you have the opportunity to do so and the desire and the means to do so, please consider financially supporting our orchestra this year. We are putting out all of our programming free of charge to our audience. If you can, there is a donation link on the NSO website. You can also join in donating through our affiliate links, Amazon Smile. If you cannot contribute financially right now, we understand that times are tough. Please consider liking this video, sharing it, as it helps get this video in front of more people and gets the NSO out to a wider audience. Thank you. Be safe, be healthy, and please come again.
Thank you.